What's up, everybody? We're back with another episode of Fantasy Football 201. Week 1 start, sit questions, other fan mailbag questions, etc. So, for this video, I'm going to go through this intro pretty quick, but what I'm going to do in this channel is every Saturday night, I'm going to make a video that has fan questions for start, sit, etc. So, if you comment on the channel, I will talk in depth about your question. And depending on how many I get to, I'll try to get through as many as possible. But if you reply, right now I only have about 116 subscribers, so I will most likely be able to reply to all of your comments, so just keep that in mind. But in this video, I'm going to talk about some decisions of who I think should start and sit for this weekend. And if you got some other questions about players, I will get into that as well. So check out the description below if you're interested in more content on my channel. I make quite a bit of stuff, aside from fantasy football as well, if you're interested in that. But real quick, I'm going to talk about some highlights from this week that I think are very important. So real quick, I'm just going to talk about the Dallas-Tampa Bay game yesterday. So if you watched my mistake video, I said that the 10th biggest mistake was drafting Rob Gronkowski, which I kind of was wrong about that. But I do think that, I do stand by the point that I make that I think Gronk will be highly inconsistent. I highly doubt that he will put up another game like that, 8 for 90 with 2 touchdowns. I just don't see him lasting the whole season like that. He's not going to go back to the way he was 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago when he was just the dominant tight end. So, and I'm going to talk about him later next week because he's going to be one of the prime sell high guys for next week. So keep that in mind. The other thing with Tampa Bay that's factoring into my point about Gronk is that you look at Mike Evans and he had an absolute dud game, whereas a lot of the other players went off. And I talk about how Mike Evans is an example of somebody that's constantly up and down, but I think that this will happen quite often with all of the Buccaneers because their whole system revolves around different guys getting different opportunities. Tom Brady is going to find guys open. He's going to play the matchups, so people are going to get phased out. I think the Bucs, because they have so many weapons, it's almost like sometimes they're going to just eat away at each other's numbers. So it's just, I just caution that with the Buccaneers. I've said this before. I was wrong about Gronk for week 1, but at the same time, I stand by what I said about Mike Evans, which was correct, and I think that the general inconsistency trends could happen a lot with this team. For Dallas, so I talked about Dallas and I talked about Amari Cooper. You should sell him. I was wrong about that. But again, Amari Cooper does have a lot of up and down games too. I think that Dallas, to me, what stood out to me more as a player that you want to avoid is Zeke Elliott. I think he did not look very efficient at all. And Tony Pollard, when he had the ball, looked a lot better to me. So they kind of didn't really play Zeke as a lot in the first half, but they used him more towards the end, but kind of more as like a decoy because they're trying to pass the ball more. So I'm very curious to see what happens with Zeke when he has a better matchup, but I think the guy that I really like on Dallas is CeeDee Lamb because he had a lot of targets go his way. He also had 3 drops, so his numbers could have been even better than they were. But Amari Cooper, another good sell high opportunity guy that I'm going to talk about him next week as well. The other point that I want to make is with regards to this Ravens backfield, because this illustrates the whole point that I've been talking about how you win fantasy football leagues is constantly paying attention to the news of teams, because if you did with this Baltimore Ravens situation, then you really got yourself some great players. Because if you're not familiar with Baltimore, what happened is that original starting running back J.K. Dobbins tore his ACL. He was out for the year. Next up was Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. Justice Hill earlier in the week tore his Achilles, so then it just looked totally like Gus Edwards' system. And then a backup running back who was undrafted last year, hardly played, and Tyson Williams. Then on Thursday, Gus Edwards tore his ACL. So they've literally, I think I saw something on it that literally over the last 12 days, 3 running backs were lost to season-ending injuries. So now Tyson Williams is the #1 running back. And if you also haven't been keeping up the news as well, Latavius Murray, who was dropped from the Saints, a few days later picked up by the Ravens because they are desperate for a running back. You also have Le'Veon Bell, who signed off of waivers signed to their practice squad. It's unclear if he's actually joined the team at this time. But then there's also Devonta Freeman in the fold as well. Cannon is another running back that has some familiarity there too. So if you were savvy in the waivers and realized during the Justice Hill injury to pick up Tyson Williams, then now you're looking at Tyson Williams as your number one running back. And this illustrates you constantly want to be monitoring these situations, especially with running backs, and stacking yourself with the handcuffs to some of these guys, because if these guys go down with injuries like this, and I know this is a very drastic example for one team, but there's going to be situations like this that happen as the season goes along. Running backs get injured. It's a long season. There's going to be people that get hurt. So you have to be savvy and pick up these guys in advance, because if they're already get injured and then they're left on waivers, somebody's going to pick them up before you. So be smart and try to pick these guys up in advance, because this is a classic example of you monitor the waiver wires, you try to pick up these guys in advance, and then when the injuries do happen, you have a number one running back now. So just use this as a lesson. If this cost you, if you had Gus Edwards or Justice Hill or something like that, you should have grabbed Tyson Williams just to be safe. But if you didn't, it's not the end of the world. You got time, but use this as a lesson to do this with some of your other running backs on your team. So now we will get into some questions. And I have a fan question from Ryan H. He has some questions about who to start sit. So I will get into that. Thank you for your support to the channel. So his question is, first of all, he's looking for one of 4 wide receivers to put into his wide receiver 2 position. It's between Robert Woods, Marquez Callaway, Michael Pittman, and Jacoby Myers. Then he's trying to fill a flex with any of those players, as well as Trey Sermon, Tyson Williams, and Nyheim Hines. This is a standard league. So what I would do in this situation, so for your wide receiver, I would go with Robert Woods. I think Robert Woods, he's got the most opportunity for the Rams. Him and Cooper Kupp are pretty much locked in as the wide receiver 1A and 1B. I think Matt Stafford will definitely get them involved. And it's great value for you to take Robert Woods. He's high draft capital position. The number 2 player that I would highly consider close to him is Michael Pittman. My only question with Michael Pittman is he is projected to be the number 1 guy, but what is Carson Wentz going to look like in his ability to actually get him the ball? Carson Wentz has been dealing with some injury issues and such, so that could negatively affect Pittman. But I would go Robert Woods for your wide receiver 2 position. And then I probably would go Pittman if you were in a PPR league, but because you're in a standard league, I would go Tyson Williams as your flex. Because I think that in a standard league, Tyson Williams, you look at what's probably going to happen for the Ravens is they're playing the Raiders, which is not a very good defense. I think the Ravens will probably be ahead, and because of that, they're going to be running the ball quite a bit. They already run the ball quite a bit anyway, and then especially since you're in a standard league, Tyson Williams, if he gets 2 touchdowns or something like that, which is actually quite likely in my opinion, then he will provide a lot more value than somebody like a receiver, especially a receiver on the Colts, which we don't know if they're going to be effective getting down the field with Carson Wentz quite yet. So I would go Tyson Williams in your flex and go Robert Woods as your wide receiver 2. The next series of questions that I have are some questions that I pulled from other sources of other fan questions and things like that, because I think they're good hypotheticals for discussion purposes on this channel. And once again, if you're first time watching this, if you have any comments or start-sit questions for future weeks, please let me know. I'm going to make a video every Tuesday which talks buy low, sell high. So if you comment in that video at the beginning of the week, then I will include that in the next show. If you do have questions for this video, I'll try to see if I can respond to you, but unfortunately I won't be able to actually put out another video prior to this Sunday. So some other fan questions. So Cooper Kupp, Brandon Ayuk, or Deontay Johnson. It wasn't specified what type of league this was. If you had to pick between these 3, I would go Cooper Kupp number 1. I would go Brandon Ayuk 2, and I would go Deontay Johnson 3. I think the Steelers wide receivers all scare me because they all can pretty much split each other's touches. and they're playing the Bills, which I think is going to be a pretty good defense. So I personally would rather go Kupp first because of their quarterback play over Ayuk, and then Ayuk because of his potential opportunity against the Lions. So the next question I have is Tyson Williams or Josh Jacobs for PPR purposes. So Tyson Williams, I understand, is getting a lot of hype, but I think this might be a little bit too much because at the end of the day, he's an undrafted running back from last year. He hasn't really played a lot of NFL snaps, although he did get some good reports coming out of the Ravens camp. But still, Josh Jacobs is a way more proven player. I would definitely go Jacobs in this matchup. I think that if you're behind and you're looking for a play to maybe try to catch up on the points, I would go Tyson Williams if you're really behind as a just an outlier play to try to catch yourself up. But I think Jacobs is generally a better play. That this guy's a pretty much consistently round 3 or above draft pick, so don't sleep on Josh Jacobs for that. But another hypothetical with Tyson Williams is him or James Conner. And in this situation, I would go Tyson Williams because James Conner, to me, he has talent, but I think Arizona is leaning more towards Chase Edmonds as their number one running back. I think Conner could have a role as a goal line guy, things like that. But I think that Edmonds is a more versatile player. And I think that, you're going up against you have a team in the Ravens that are going to be running the ball quite a bit, and I think Tyson Williams is generally going to get more opportunities than James Conner will. So this is a question of who to keep on your team. You're looking to drop some players. How would you prioritize Latavius Murray, Nyheim Hines, or Chuba Hubbard? And to me, when you have guys on your bench and you're looking to try to figure out who to keep among bench options, you want to try to have the guys that have better upside, because you can have these guys that have mediocre value that you can keep on your bench, but in reality, they're probably never really going to break through and become like just a breakaway player. So it's generally better to have guys with high upside. And in my opinion, Latavius Murray has the highest upside of this group because he's probably not going to be the number one running back this week, but it's going to probably be Tyson Williams because of familiarity with the system. But Latavius Murray has proven to be effective throughout his career, and if Tyson Williams struggles to adjust to the game for whatever reason, Latavius Murray has another great opportunity to step up into this situation. So I would go him next, or number one of this group. Number two, I'd go Chuba Hubbard because that's the handcuff to Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, he's not going to give you very much unless Christian McCaffrey gets hurt, but lottery play to hold on to if that happens. And then Nyheim Hines, I'd go 3 because Nyheim Hines, I think, will always give you consistent value if you're in a pinch. But in reality, guys like that, unless you are really hurting for running backs, I would rather have Latavius Murray or Chuba Hubbard than somebody like Hines. Who to start between Julio Jones, Deebo Samuel, and Cooper Kupp? That's a tough call between Kupp and Julio, but I think given the matchup, I would probably go Julio Jones against Arizona. Kupp is going up against the Bears, which is a decent pass defense. So I would go Julio Jones, then Cooper Kupp, and then Deebo Samuel. And a lot of this has to do with quarterback play as well, as we'll see exactly what Jimmy Garoppolo does between Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle all being back. Not super confident in Deebo Samuel. All right, so this question is Marvin Jones or Chase Claypool. This is a tricky situation because they're both in receiving cores that generally have 3 good options that have various opinions about who is going to break out. And Claypool is the one that I like to break out for the Steelers, but Marvin Jones is the one that I generally have the least amount of confidence in from the Jags. But I would go Marvin Jones this week because going up against the Houston Texans, I think that the Jags are going to be throwing it quite a bit because they don't have a great defense themselves. I'm seeing this being a shootout game, and I see the Steelers-Buffalo game being a little more, for lack of better words, not as high scoring. So I would personally go Marvin Jones in this, but I would much rather have Chase Claypool as a receiver throughout the season. This is an interesting question right here. Is who do you prioritize among the Chargers running backs between Roundtree, Josh Kelly, and Justin Jackson? So this is another bit of news. Is Austin Eckler dealing with a hamstring injury? He's now questionable. I'm not too concerned about Austin Eckler missing this week, but if you're going to go with any of these running backs as a handcuff to Austin Eckler, I would much rather have Roundtree because Josh Kelly and Justin Jackson we've seen on this team before over the last year when Eckler went out, and neither of them really took a strong hold of this backfield. It was actually Kalen Ballage that was kind of the one that ultimately did that, but he's not on this team anymore. So if you're just going with the odds of somebody with potential upside who we haven't seen before, I think Roundtree has a lot more upside than either of those two because we haven't really seen we've seen an opportunity that Jackson and Kelly have had and them not take advantage of it. We haven't seen anything with Roundtree. He's got some pretty good reviews so far, so I would personally go with a little more upside than those two personally. All right, so this is another interesting question I thought. So this person has 3 running backs on their team, and they're looking to pick up another one, but then they're trying to consider dropping Mike Williams for Latavius Murray. So my question to this individual is, if you have 3 running backs on your team and you're looking to drop a wide receiver, what's your situation with your tight ends and your quarterbacks? If you have more than one tight end or more than one quarterback, and it's a standard formatting league where you have 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, flex, etc., then I would definitely look to drop the quarterback or the tight end before those, because unless you have a lot of wide receivers, you really want to just prioritize just having 1 tight end and 1 defense, because you need that running back depth, and Latavius Murray is somebody that if you have him on waivers, you have to pick him up now. So if I try to drop one of them first, but if you have to drop Williams, I would personally do that because I think Williams is a little bit up and down personally, so I don't typically rely on him as much. And then I think Latavius Murray he's got so much upside to potentially become the number 1 running back if Tyson Williams struggles, as I already talked about. So I would personally do that if I were you. But try to see if you can drop an extra tight end or quarterback first, is basically what I'm saying. Potential trade options. So this is Aaron Rodgers. They're looking to potentially trade Aaron Rodgers off for Antonio Gibson. And I'm going to double check this because it goes through the roster formatting. But I think that's an interesting question because that very much depends on the league format that you're in. Okay, so this is a half-point PPR super flex league. He's trying to trade Aaron Rodgers for Antonio Gibson. He has Mahomes, so he's already got the best quarterback in the league. He's also got Jameis Winston, who's a pretty good sleeper option for the Saints. His running back core is Swift, Henderson, Tyson Williams, Ronald Jones, Pollard, and Latavius Murray. He could also get quarterbacks on waivers to include Wentz, Garoppolo, Bridgewater, Tyrod Taylor, or Jared Goff. So, yeah, I would trade Aaron Rodgers for Antonio Gibson if you can do that, because your running back core, you do have some running backs, but there's some questions with all of them, in my opinion. Swift has got an injury. Henderson, I don't know if he's actually going to be an elite number 1 running back or be in a committee. Tyson Williams, we've talked about him quite a bit already. Ronald Jones played terrible yesterday. Pollard, he's got Zeke Elliott there. Latavius Murray, we've also talked about him too. So if you could get Gibson, that will be your RB1 of that group, in my opinion. And then it's always better to stream quarterbacks. And I have videos that go through the positions where I talk about this, but you want to prioritize running back depth as much as possible. And if you could stream quarterbacks and really are savvy about picking up good quarterbacks available, you do have, I would personally go that route. I don't know if guys in this league like Justin Fields or Trey Lance are available on waivers, but those are also good options to have if you're in a super flex to maybe stash potentially. Just my opinion, I would do that trade. Other questions. So you're looking to start 2 of these players, Laviska Shenault, Chase Claypool, T. Higgins, Darrell Henderson, or Michael Pittman. I'm actually trying to make a similar situation in my league with 2 of these players. Laviska Shenault, I would definitely start among that group the most. I think he's got the most upside on the Jags, and they've got a terrible defense playing Houston. Start Laviska Shenault, definitely. And then of this group, it's a close call to me between Claypool and Pittman. I'm personally not super high on Higgins, just the way the Bengals wide receiver core is split right now. But I would go Pittman between him and Claypool because Pittman ultimately is generally the best option that the Colts have right now. Claypool's going to be splitting it with Juju and Deontay Johnson. So Laviska Shenault and Michael Pittman. Back to Michael Pittman. Should I start Michael Pittman or Jacoby Myers? So in my opinion, Jacoby Myers is getting way too much hype right now. One, he has had opportunity to be the number one wide receiver with the Patriots last year, and he did not do that. He did have some okay games from time to time, but I'm just not super confident there on his ability to just break out all of a sudden with Mac Jones. And then two, he's probably going to draw Xavier Howard, which is one of the best cornerbacks in the league for Miami, a very good defense. So I see potential for Jacoby Myers to be shut down. Michael Pittman, however, I think is one of the best wide receivers that the Colts have. He's a great sleeper to have in general on your team. And he's going up against Seattle, which is a much more porous pass defense. Corey Davis or Kareem Hunt. So the Jets wide receiver core is also another interesting topic of debate because I think Corey Davis is kind of the guy that's getting a lot more of the attention. But I think that long-term for New York, it's probably going to be more Denzel Mims or Elijah Moore are going to be the guys to step up. But given this first week, I think Corey Davis is going to have opportunity, especially going against Carolina, which is not a great defense themselves. Whereas Kareem Hunt is not only is he in a timeshare, but Cleveland could be in a situation where they fall behind early to the Chiefs, and then they're just looking to pass the ball a lot. Not a lot of opportunities for Kareem Hunt there. So I would go Corey Davis in this group, especially if you're in a PPR league. Maybe if you're in a standard, I would consider Hunt, but still I think Davis is going to have some opportunity for you. Jacoby Myers or Corey Davis. Corey Davis, I already talked about this. I think Jacoby Myers is not a good pick play at all this week. And then should you go Russell Gage or Corey Davis? So I actually like Russell Gage more than Corey Davis because Matt Ryan going up against the Eagles. You know their number one wide receiver is going to be Calvin Ridley, but I think there's also going to be a lot of opportunity for Russell Gage and Kyle Pitts this week too. And Russell Gage I actually would prefer over Pitts if you had to flex either of those two, is because I think Russell Gage, week one, he's already got familiarity with the system. Tight ends sometimes don't always adjust right away. Go Russell Gage over Corey Davis. This is a question of somebody looking to. He's got Eckler. He's probably going to play him, I would assume. But if Eckler doesn't play, Mike Davis, Damian Harris, or Justin Jackson. Justin Jackson, I would not play him because I think if best case scenario is in a timeshare. And then worst case scenario just doesn't play. Damian Harris is already going to be in a timeshare. We already know that with the New England backfield. But Mike Davis is pretty much clearing away the number one running back on Atlanta. So I would play Mike Davis if Austin Eckler is banged up and not able to play. But I would still probably honestly go Eckler if he does play, because I think Eckler is still going to have value catching the ball, even if he's not necessarily running it up the middle because of his hamstring injury. So that's how I view those players. This is another tough question. David Montgomery or Devonta Smith in a PPR league. I have concerns about Devonta Smith personally because I think that he projects to me as a guy that's going to have some games where he blows up and goes off, but then the next game he has like one catch for 10 yards. It's going to be very much dependent on the matchup, and I think that for this week going up against Atlanta, I would actually feel that Devonta Smith might have a good week this week. David Montgomery, I would generally want to play more, but he's got a very tough matchup going up against the Rams defense. So I would go Devonta Smith this week, but I still think that even if you're in a situation where you're trying to play it safe, it might be better to go David Montgomery because Devonta Smith might kind of, there's a chance. I would not be surprised if he struggles just because of the type of player that I think he projects to be, but Yeah, I would go Devonta Smith this week, just between the matchups of both these players. Another question: Kenny Galladay, Jacoby Myers, or Juju Smith-Schuster? So in this situation, I already talked about Jacoby Myers and why I'm not a fan of him. Juju, I've already kind of talked about to a degree as well. With the Steelers situation, they're splitting among 3 receivers, whereas Kenny Galladay is generally projected to be the number 1 wide receiver on the Giants. I don't think Denver's pass defense is as good as people say that it is. So I would go Kenny Galladay in this situation personally. Person is also, I've talked about this a little bit as well earlier. They have 2 tight ends, Noah Fant and Dallas Goedert, and they're considering dropping one of them for Deebo Samuel. And I would definitely do that personally because to me, Fant and Goddard are both tight ends that have a lot of questions to me, but I think Goddard has more questions to me. So I've talked about Dallas Goedert as one of my sell high guys in this video, in a previous video that I made earlier this week. I don't think Goddard is really going to have as much opportunity to really break out this season, especially with Zach Ertz being there. And Jalen Hurts doesn't really prefer throwing it to tight ends based on the games he played last year. So Deebo Samuel to me is much better value. Deebo Samuel actually had a pretty good 2019. Dealt with some injuries last year. Brandon Ayuk stepped up. So with Jimmy Garoppolo back, maybe Deebo Samuel it goes back to being a top target again. It's asking quite a bit, but I think there's a better chance of that than Dallas Goedert breaking out as an elite tight end. So drop Dallas Goedert for Deebo Samuel personally. But this question is asking, should I drop Darnell Mooney for Bryan Edwards, who plays for the Raiders? And I would definitely not do that. For one, Darnell Mooney is playing first, so you're costing yourself unless you're in a position where you're thinking about starting either of these players. Mooney is a guy that I personally, one of my leagues I have him stashed on my bench because I think that he's a guy that has a lot of potential, but is probably more than likely going to break out with Justin Fields before Andy Dalton. So that's why I'm kind of stashing him for now. Bryan Edwards is getting a lot of hype for the Raiders as a receiver that's going to break out for them. But with the Raiders, I think people are forgetting about Hunter Renfrow. He was a very solid PPR player who's just not getting drafted at all this year for some reason. And Hunter Renfrow, I think, might actually have more opportunity than Bryan Edwards. Bryan Edwards is still a rookie. Sometimes rookie wide receivers don't always play very well. You've also got Henry Ruggs there. You've also got Darren Waller there, who pretty much is their number 1 wide receiver. They're also going up against the Ravens, which is a good defense. So I would personally hold on to Darnell Mooney. I think there's more upside there personally. This is a question of starting Tyler Higbee or DJ Chark at the flex. So that's a tough one because I talked about Higbee having a good matchup going up against the Bears as a team that's weak against tight ends. But I would go Chark this week just given the Houston Texans. But I think both of those are solid plays. I think that if you're in a situation where like because Higbee plays later, if you're trying to like wait it out and you think that you are going to be in a position where you're probably winning and you're just trying to play it safe because you already are favored by quite a bit over the opponent, maybe I would go Higbee because you've got some time to kind of gauge that until Sunday night. But I would rather go Chark if you're in a situation where you're even or behind. Back to Tyson Williams. Should I start him or Kareem Hunt? I would go Tyson Williams personally over Kareem Hunt because Tyson Williams, I talked about this a little bit earlier. He's going up against a team that is not a great defense, and they're probably going to be ahead and run the ball a lot. So there's a very high probability he gets multiple touchdowns, whereas Kareem Hunt, there's a strong probability that he is just splitting touches as a pass blocking back out of the backfield for Baker Mayfield because the Browns are behind and trying to catch up. So I would go Tyson Williams. And then another Tyson Williams question. Should I start him or Myles Gaskin? Start Myles Gaskin. That guy has a lot more opportunity to me personally than Tyson Williams. Gaskin is also a great PPR player, so I would go with Gaskin, especially in that format. 2 more. So this is a question between Clyde Edwards-Helaire, DJ Moore, or Brandon Ayuk for a standard flex. So, standard is a little more difficult to predict. I think that given that it's the Chiefs, I would probably go Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I know they're going up against a tough defense, but I think that just with how explosive that offense is, Clyde Edwards-Helaire will have some opportunities at the goal line to get touchdowns. If you're in a PPR league, I would go DJ Moore next. DJ Moore is a close second to Clyde Edwards-Helaire in standard. And then Brandon Ayuk, I would go third of those three. And then last question, Brandon Ayuk is in this one as well. Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, Damian Harris, or Tyson Williams. So Harris, no. I almost never start New England running backs. And then Higgins, I would also caution as well. It depends on I think if you're ahead, because I think that if you're behind, I think Brandon Ayuk has got a lot more ceiling going up against the Lions. But what very well could happen too is that the 49ers get ahead early and they just never throw the ball. Tyson Williams is probably the safest play of that group in my opinion. But if you're in a PPR league and you're behind, I think Ayuk I would probably go with. So that's all I got for this video. Once again, if you have questions that weren't answered in this video and you want to find out more, if you comment below, I might be able to answer before Sunday. I'll try to do my best that I can. If not, if you have questions for future videos that you'd like me to include on these Saturday preview, just comment below when I make my start sit videos for week, my stock up, stock down videos that I make at the beginning of the week. If you comment on those, then I will answer that question in this video. So I'll reward you in that category. So once again, thank you for watching it. And if you're new and you enjoy this content, please consider like, commenting, or subscribing. All right, I'll see you guys later. Bye.